Well, I'd like to go ahead and call this August meeting of Planning and Zoning Mexico Beach to order. And we'll begin with a roll call, if you'll start that, Tammy.
Okay. Ms. Gardner? Here. Mr. Elsey?
Here.
Mr. Kerrigan?
Here.
Mr. Kreese is absent. Mr. Cox is absent. Mr. Henderson?
Here.
Mr. Fasagi?
Here. So just for clarification, does that mean they will both be voting members tonight?
Yes.
Two alternates will vote. Just want to clarify, okay? All right. Moving on to the consent agenda, the minutes for the July 8th, 2024 meeting. Has everyone had a chance to look over the minutes? Yes. Are there any questions of the minutes? No questions. I had a comment on the minutes. There are a number of typos and small things in here that I don't want to hold up the minutes. I don't doubt that the information is accurate, but next time around, I ask that you guys would take a closer look at that.
We
Yeah.
sure will.
All right, the next order of business is the Salt Creek Temporary Parking Lot Development Order, and I believe first we're going to hear Ms. Laura Mills Dutcher. Oh, we do. Thank you for that. No other comments on the minutes. We have a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. All right, we have a motion from Julie and a second from Lee. So all in favor of the minutes as presented?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved as presented. Thank you so much. Thank you, Julie. All right, just so the public knows, Planning and Zoning Board, we are an advisory council. We review the business that comes before Mexico Beach. This is not the ultimate place that it's decided. It goes to the city council. So tonight we review the planning and zoning business of the city. And this first one again is Salt Creek Temporary Parking Lot Development Order. So Laura, if you will take us through this.
Yes. This application was received by Dewberry on behalf of the St. Joe Company for the development of a temporary parking lot at the end of Canal, well, at the turn of Canal Boulevard Parkway. It's approximately an acre at 44,365 square feet. It's in the tourist mixed-use future land use designation as well as the tourist mixed-use zoning district. It also includes a pathway that will come from the north side of Highway 98 under the bridge down into this area. And what we did look at is wetland setbacks, impervious surface, and we also looked at the lot itself. Now, the stormwater issues, the engineer looked at that the city retains, and that's Anchor Engineering. And they did have some comments down in the packet, which I'm not at liberty to speak to. And I don't know if the applicant is here. Okay, great. To be able to answer some of those questions. But this is in, the parking area is located within the flood zone X, which is outside of the floodplain, and we didn't really look at much else other than the impervious surface and setbacks, which they did adjust for us after I brought to their attention the wetland setbacks that were required. And because it's temporary and there's no buildings or structures, that's basically what we looked at. So what has been submitted is in compliance with the comprehensive plan and land development code as far as planning. Now, I think there are some engineering comments here that the applicant might need to address.
Okay. So is that everything from you in terms of the areas where various aspects of it were met?
Yes, it's all good to go from us.
Okay.
The only thing we might want to ask to clarify, the applicant to clarify is what is defined as temporary. How long is temporary?
All right, thank you, Laura. So next we'll move to the public discussion. So I'll have any member of the public that wants to comment. If you would please come up to the podium, state your name, state your address, and please do so here. So is anyone from the public that would like to?
My name is Daryl Carpenter. We own the property at 126 Canal Parkway, which is adjacent to the parking area. If it's temporary parking, why would it need to be paved?
It's a gravel parking lot.
Mm-hmm. So if it's an impervious area, where's the runoff gonna go to? It's gonna go into Salt Creek. Is there any provisions made for drainage or the treating runoff, or what is the provisions for treating runoff?
Laura, do you want to answer that? I
The
know
engineer
the
needs-
Engineer will do that? Okay, in the packet, I did see that there's a dry stormwater
Correct.
area.
Yes, sir, yep.
Is that your only question?
And what is the purpose for the temporary parking lot?
So we were actually trying to research the minutes from the approval of the Salt Creek Phase 2 plat. And it's my recollection, without having read them, that this was part of the condition of that approval because there was concern about having parking there on the south side of 98 for people to come and park and then go walk down to the beach. And there was a lot of discussion about providing parking for this, if you want.
So now the city has control of that area?
No, this is property owned by the St. Joe
I know, but the
Company.
city now has signs there stating that you can't park at night, or there's restrictions for parking there.
I don't know whose signs those are, but
Yeah.
can't
City
speak to
has,
that.
it says City of Mexico Beach right there.
You need to ask the
City of Mexico Beach owns that lot, correct?
We're gonna need you to, please, if you would do the same thing as this gentleman. If his questions are done, I'll let him have a seat. Thank you, Daryl. And you can come forward and state your name and your address in Mexico Beach.
I'm gonna get my glasses. My name is Lainey Brunner, and I'm located at 110 Canal Parkway. And this was just now brought to our attention about the parking going in there. I think it's just gonna be, I mean, how many parking places are there gonna be there, and how long is it going to be there?
And when we,
Yeah, I think so too.
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You might want to say a few words to help clarify some of these questions.
All right, well,
And that would be fine, Tim, and that way we'll know what to say.
And I would remind the chair that this is a quasi judicial proceeding, so technically we should swear in all of the.
I mean, it's already been approved, or,
Okay, would you like to go ahead and proceed with the swearing in?
I do.
Okay. So everyone who's going to speak, if you'll raise your right hand, Tammy will swear you in.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
yes.
Ms. Lange, before you step down, can I ask you a question about your question? Your question was, who owns, well, your question was about the City of Mexico Beach signs that say no parking.
No, I'm not talking about that, but I know that's where the restrooms used to be, and that's where the sump pump station is. And due to the plat that I pulled, it shows that it belongs to Mexico Beach. I'm sure St. Joe Beach owns everything behind there, and then a half an acre up closer to at the end of Canal Parkway.
Yes.
So they own everything over there. So I just don't understand why, I mean, I'll let him go into that first and see how many parking places and all.
Right, well, so again, so I'm clear as to what your statement was about the City of Mexico Beach signs. Were they by the Mexico Beach owned property? Were there signs?
That's where the parking lot's supposed to go, correct? Mexico Beach owns 0.1 acres there, is what is on the property appraiser site in Bay County. Behind it is St. Joe Company,
Correct.
which owns all the property behind Canal Parkway, I guess all the way to Sugar Sands.
As well as behind your home.
As well behind my home too, my
To-
lot, yes,
to the-
right,
To the Highway 98.
right,
Thank you.
okay.
And there's current parking there.
All right, let's go ahead and have the engineer come up.
Richard Funtner, 203 Aberdeen Parkway, Panama City, Florida. So I guess I'll start with the property.
And what company are you with?
Oh, with Dewberry.
With Dewberry, thank you.
Yes, sir, yep. Chris Short could not make it tonight, I'm sure everyone's familiar with him. We come over
So
here.
you're here on behalf of the applicant.
Well, I'm here on behalf of Dewberry and behalf of St. Joe. Yes, sir. Yep. So it's on St. Joe property, temporary. This is all part of the Salt Creek Phase 2 development order conditional as she discussed. So it wasn't necessarily in the approval, but it was in the meeting minutes discussing the location of a temporary beach access and parking lot for residents of Salt Creek, but also for the public. So this is going to be a public beach access and parking lots. It's on St. Joe's property. It's stormwater. I know you were discussing the stormwater. So it's an impervious surface by nature, but it's not going to be paved. It's going to be a gravel lot. It's going to sheet flow. Everything's going from east to west. It's going to a dry retention stormwater management facility. It's actually discharged to uplands before it goes to Salt Creek, but it's exceeding the treatment requirements by the state and the city of Mexico Beach, as well as attenuation requirements. So that handles the stormwater side, and really the whole route of how we got here with this. So it was part of the conditional approval for Salt Creek Phase 2 before going to final plat. So it won't be paved. Will not be paved. It'll be gravel.
Restrooms,
There's not restrooms proposed as this.
so how are we gonna accommodate all those people?
Well, the main goal would be to have people walking down from Mexico Beach crossings in the Salt Creek development. There's a 5-foot sidewalk that's going to come down, go underneath the bridge, and then tie into existing infrastructure for walkway down to the beach. And really, it's going to help provide a parking area where that whole Canal Parkway gets really packed up with cars right now. They're going to have a nice lot to be able to park in to alleviate some of that traffic going down to the south side that you're going to end up turning around anyway. So it's alleviating some of that traffic going down to the very end.
How many parking places?
There's 62, and then 10 by 20.
62.
62.
62.
62.
Could you just go into what you mean when you say phase 2? How far are we going in phase 2? I realize there's lots of planning for behind our house, and we're just very curious on.
She needs to get on the record.
I'm just
It's a
asking.
QJ hearing.
I'm
So
sorry.
you need
Okay.
to come and state your name and
Thank you.
and sworn in.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
If you'll come on up.
Hi, I'm Jenna Carpenter, 126 Canal Parkway. I was just curious as when he mentioned phase 2, what does that consist of? I do realize that there's lots of plans for behind the property there, and I'm just curious as to how far you're planning on taking this to date.
So everything I'm talking about in terms of phase 1 and phase 2 Mexico Beach crossings, that's all on the north side of 98.
Okay.
So they have a master plan for the PUD on what they're intending to do on the south side of 98, but there's nothing to date being constructed or anything. So the phase 2 is all north side that's already been approved. The DO's already approved. This temporary gravel parking is within the conditional approval of phase 2, which is to provide public access, public parking on the south side of 98, beach access.
Can I say something? I just know we live right there, and I know that Canal Parkway does get congested at, June, July. But really, I have never seen that parking lot used much. It's there, I mean, people can park. I've not seen it used like that at all. Like 62 cars, whew, okay.
They're gonna be used though. It's gonna get really busy.
Well, if I can just add that this is a condition of the development order that the city approved for Salt Creek Phase 2. So they're not volunteering this parking lot. It's something that they were required to do by the city.
And is it already approved?
The preliminary is approved, the preliminary site, the Phase 2 plat.
For the parking lot?
Yes.
Okay,
As a result
because
of-
they've
there's
already-
a lot of people
They've
that
already
came.
approved it, so if we don't want it there, there's nothing we can do about it.
Salt Creek Phase 2 has been preliminary approved, yes.
For the parking lot on
We're
Canal.
here tonight
using
for the parking lot.
Okay.
Lisa, if you'll come up, please.
Lisa Logan, Mexico Beach. It was my understanding, and I'm not alone in this, that the whole purpose of this parking lot was to move the people. I'm going to draw an air picture here. This is 98. Here's the crossings. It was to move the people from this development across 98 to a parking lot and then provide access to the beach down there for the sole purpose of eliminating the traffic coming from the crossings to come into the other parts of the town that are already heavily trafficked, and to keep those cars and those people out of the rest of the town. That was the whole purpose of this. The question that has to be asked is, how does this benefit the city? Because what we now have is the developer moving this mass of people through a congested intersection onto a small road that's already congested, through a neighborhood, into a city-owned parking lot, and then going into this temporary parking lot. And then the only way those people who park in that parking lot can get to the beach is to come back out to Canal Parkway and go down to the end of Canal Parkway and use that beach access down there. To me, that completely defeats the purpose of what we asked them to do. Now, I do know why the developer does not want to get into building a road and building a beach access. It gets into dealing with state agencies and permits and lots of money and lots of plans, and that's not what the developer. Huh?
Sand dunes.
Sand dunes, DEP. So that's not what the developer wants to do. So their proposal is to use an existing city, street, and neighborhood to move their people to that beach. How does that benefit the city?
Please, I have two questions.
Yes, ma'am.
My first question is, if it's just for the development and nobody, me or you, can't go park on there, but you're saying the development,
I'm
for
saying,
all the people of the development, but that won't be the only people that park there.
of course not. It's a
Right.
public parking lot. But the
Right.
whole point, Julie, was to move the people who are in this development that way,
I
not
understand.
down this way.
So that goes into my next question. Because I've been to most of the meetings about the Salt Creek thing. So, and one of the things that everybody fussed about was that we have enough parking for all those people. So that's why we're here. So if we put another road out there on Highway 98, that's a temporary road, isn't that gonna be something that people are concerned about, that in that short span right there, that there's 4 roads right there?
If the developer got permission from DOT to put an extra road where it was not really supposed to be, they're not gonna have difficulty, in my opinion, getting this extra road to go into the parking lot.
I just
So,
telling you.
the
what's
whole
right.
point of this was to give access from 98 to keep all of the extra traffic away from the already congested areas. That road is not in the plans.
Did anybody else have a
Anybody
question,
else?
Lisa? No, I do.
Yes,
I heard you say that, and I want to make sure I heard this accurate.
sure.
I think you said moving the people from the crossings to all over Mexico Beach, or something about all over Mexico Beach. And I kind of see this as crossings to beach access.
Beach access that goes through the already established neighborhood on Canal Parkway. The whole point was, of course, if they want to, they can go. Of course, it's public beach access all through town. But the whole point was to have this development down here have its access down here instead of getting in their cars and going into the rest of town, which will give them closer beach access if they park on the side streets and on the dedicated beach. That's much closer access to the
I
beach.
see your point.
So move straight across, because that developer owns all of it. It's not like he's trying to cross somebody else's property.
So to clarify, this parking lot is being built so that current residents of the crossings and future residents of Salt Creek Townhomes have a place to park and not all end up at the end of the street.
Exactly.
As well as non-residents, the rest of us that want to go down,
Exactly.
fish, take a walk on the beach, everyone ends up in that same congested area. I guess it hasn't gotten too congested. One of the residents said that small parking lot is not getting any traffic right now.
Right.
So, I know, these are not easy problems to solve. Last week was, we may not have enough parking for or last month for the grocery store, and now we may have too much parking for beach access, but we need parking. And it sounds like this was a condition of the development, is that correct?
Yes, and I would just like to comment also, if you looked at the aerial that the applicant submitted in their packet, and this is my fault for not mentioning it, there is also a planned pathway as part of this request. So the idea is those that are the city residents that are living on the north side of 98 can come down through that pathway underneath the bridge and walk down also. So not all of them will be driving down to the parking lot. They'll be able to come down through the path, come under the bridge, and continue walking down to the beach.
So they would park in the boat ramp area?
But anybody can ride, anybody that comes in has access to that walkway too, right?
It's open.
So the walkway that you're talking about, I went and walked it today and tried to envision how that would work. I saw the route. I grew up as a kid here. I ran up and down underneath that canal, and I kind of wondered, how could you walk along that narrow edge underneath the bridge? And I realized that there's probably a 10-foot wide space behind the spans to the edge. So there's a pretty good sized footpath there, but something's going to have to be built to get someone from the sidewalk down to that. So what is the plan for that, whether that's a Laura or the
Well,
engineer?
Let me just say one thing. Note that I am not saying I am against the parking lot. Note that I have not said that. I am questioning the entry and exit to the parking lot. 98 versus Canal Street,
All
okay?
right, thank you. We'll capture that accurately in the minutes. Would you like to come back from Dewberry and maybe explain that walkway access? Because that's a valid point. Everyone that comes from the north side is not going to drive a car over there and park it. Many people will walk from the apartments with their dog, with their fishing poles, whatever, but how do they get down to there?
So we have a path and a planner profile basically shown of the sidewalk path, how we're making the grades, we're maintaining ADA accessibility.
Okay.
So we're coming up and tying in, but maintaining a shallow slope, less than a 5% longitudinal slope to get down to the bridge area.
Okay.
So we're maintaining an ADA accessible route, so that's handled on that side. And then we come through, we're tying into the existing underground sidewalk or existing ground sidewalk.
I was trying to envision whether stairs were going to be built there, and that sounds like that's not the
Yeah,
case.
yeah.
In your opinion, would someone be able to ride their bike from the crossings over?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, it's gonna be a 5-foot sidewalk, you know, it's gonna be less than 5% slope, so it's gonna be a real shallow slope. I mean, an ADA ramp is a 8.33% slope, and you can walk up that, you could ride a bike up that at any time, so it's gonna be a gentle slope down.
Okay, all right, thank you
When
very
you
much.
say temporary though, how long is temporary? Nobody's answered that. A year, 5 years, 10 years?
I don't know the time frame on temporary. I know that this is part of something that needs to be done. It's part of the Salt Creek Phase 2.
And then you've got the other phase that's going in right beside the townhomes too, that I don't know how many houses are gonna be built there.
That's phase
All-
2.
That's phase 2.
That's Phase 2, yeah.
Right, so.
Ma'am, can I get your name? Every time you speak,
Oh, okay.
this is a
Lady
quasi-judicial
Brown.
hearing, and your address again?
110 Canal Parkway.
Thank you.
So, yes, so it's a temporary parking lot. What they want to do is come up with a more concrete development plan down in that area to locate a permanent space for a parking lot. So that's going to be something that's going to be coming up. I don't know the exact time frame on that. It's not really up to me at all. You know, we do the design of what they're looking for, not the plan and when they're doing it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry,
I got one more question.
Okay, go ahead.
Did I hear you say sidewalks gonna be 5 feet?
Yes.
Okay, so I see in the paperwork, by the way, we got a crowd pleasing 119-page document to prepare for this. And I saw deep in one of the pages that there's a concern, and I believe, Laura, you mentioned earlier, you acknowledged earlier that there's some questions that need to be answered by the developer. It says here, sidewalks need to be 6 feet. So I would not have brought this up, I hadn't heard you just say sidewalks need to be 5 feet. So that's actually question 2. Number question 1 is, where's the sidewalk gonna go? Which sidewalk are we talking about?
Okay, so the sidewalk is coming from, if you think about where Crossings is, where that road comes here, it's basically where that T for the boat ramp road is here. It's coming on the other side of that, and it's coming across their property, and then coming down to the bridge location to go underneath. Yes. So it's coming across there from Crossings. Yes.
Gotcha. So this is a sidewalk extension on the north side of the house?
Yes.
Okay. And then the second question is, why 5 feet where I see it needs to be 6 feet?
Is it? I'll double check and make sure.
Yeah,
but-
it's in section 3.02.01. But, and that's what I wanted you to kind of run through some of these engineering questions.
Yes.
I don't know if you had a copy of this from Anchor.
Chris Short did, yes.
Okay.
Yes, he's gone through several of those.
So, do you have answers for them?
I probably will have answers.
Okay, that's good.
Laura, I won't steal your thunder because I heard you say at the beginning of the meeting that we have some questions in, and I think I know what questions they are. In this packet, there's a whole checklist of items, but there's a number of things that are in red font. I'm assuming those are the questions that need to be answered. Because one of them is the one I just asked. It's sidewalks need to be 6
Yeah.
feet, and that's in red. And I think I saw somewhere in the plan about 5 feet, and I'm sure the gentleman say 5 feet. So is that an example, Alara? Of
Yes, it
questions
is.
that need to be answered?
Yes. That, and then, you know, if there's some things that he cannot address tonight or answer tonight, then I would ask you to condition the approval based on these things being satisfied before we issue the development order.
Thank you.
Do you need me to use that for answers?
Do you know the answer to the 6 feet versus 5 feet on the sidewalk?
I can tell you that if it's gonna be 6 foot, it's gonna be 6 foot. So, but if it needs to be 6 foot based on comments, then it's an extra foot.
She wanted reasonable assurance that post-discharge runoff will not create a ponding situation.
Yes, so that's all within our modeling circumstances and having positive discharge. I would have to look at the exact scenario she's referring to, but we've got survey of our outfall location and where it's going, so we're gonna know that we're gonna have positive discharge to the downstream side.
Okay. Provide riprap dimensions.
Okay. Yeah, that's based on the DOT index table,
Okay.
so we can provide the calculations for that as well based on
And
the policies.
to provide runoff curve number calculations for ICPR input.
Perfect. Yep, that's all based on the runoff coefficient for gravel, so that's probably taken into account in all the calculations. We just probably got to point to where it's at.
And I assume that when I asked you to address the wetland setback, you guys did readjust the
We
site plan.
readjust, yes.
So that you are meeting the 30-foot setback.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. No wetland impacts are proposed as part of this, and there's a small portion of a floodplain, but that's already been compensated for. We provided calculations as well for that.
So what is your plan relative to, if this is temporary and you don't know how long that is, if a condition of the development permit on the overall subdivision is parking, what is the plan of how you're going to transition from this temporary parking to a permanent parking? And how can you expect Mexico Beach to address the temporary side without knowing what the end game is for St. Joe?
I would say that as part of this whole temporary parking, we've worked back and forth with Mexico Beach about the location and the plan for it as part of that conditional approval from Salt Creek Phase 2. When it goes into the process for the location of the permanent parking, it would be the same back and forth.
I think in combination with that, what we're trying to understand is, you know, we were talking about how temporary this is, because if this were more of a permanent situation, you would be required to provide landscaping.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of, we're trying to figure out the transition here, and when you do transition, if it will be the same footprint, I mean, that's the big question.
Okay.
And if not, then, or if yes, then why wouldn't we provide landscaping now? But if not, then that's kind of where there's some uncertainty here.
Okay.
That and the fact that, are you giving the city an easement for the part that's on St. Joe's property, and that easement, you know, it would have to discuss the transition if you're gonna put it somewhere else. You know, from a legal standpoint, I'm unclear of what you're really doing.
Okay, yeah. I understand, yeah.
Any other questions? I think Lisa was first, but state your name, your address.
Lisa Logan again, 402 Maryland, Mexico Beach. Since you're now discussing the pathway under the bridge, I just want to bring to somebody's attention that this pathway is slated to come. You have 98, you have the turn off to go to Boat Ramp Road, then you have the turn onto Boat Ramp Road. And it appears that this is coming right across where you've got boats turning in and boats going this way. So you're gonna have all these pedestrians and there's beach junk mixing in with the boat traffic. I'm just bringing that out as a
When
question.
I walked it today, it's actually, I couldn't step up the yards for you, but it's a pretty good distance from where the boat's turning. From where.
So it's not cutting across Silas Green's place? The little triangle there where Silas Green had his round house, which is where where the blue sign is. You remember Silas.
That would be for them to describe exactly where it's located. And I'd like to ask you to do one thing, maybe when you come back to city council or in the future, if you would bring the big printed maps that are easier for us to see and the public to see.
Yeah.
These aerial shots are pretty tough to understand. It would be really helpful to bring some bigger printed materials where we can understand the exact location of some of these things. But
So clearly I'm thinking.
if I run a bicycle and I came out of the crossings and I came down the road and I needed a hard surface to get me to where you're talking about, there's a pretty good bit of space between the canal and where the road takes you to the boat ramp. Yeah.
Okay,
And if you're a walker, and I am, I'm a pedestrian, I walk my dog up there 3 times a week. There's a dangerous place when you get just on the other side of that bridge until you get back to another safe space where you can get off the highway.
so clearly I'm thinking it's in a different place than what I think you're describing again.
Yes, ma'am.
We need a map.
That's the path.
So that doesn't show me anything. I'm talking about where the triangle, where the blue sign is. I just thought that's where it was. Y'all are talking farther on down is what I can tell.
All I can tell you is the property appraiser indicates all of this land is owned by the St. Joe Company.
I know, but that's not at all my question. Thank you.
So Silence Green doesn't own any of these.
I know that, but the people who have lived here would know who Silas Green was and what area of the property I was talking about. It has nothing to do with ownership. Never
All right.
mind.
Thank you, Lisa. Another one if you'll approach, please.
Daryl Carpenter again, 126 Canal Parkway. So the existing parking that's there now is owned by the city, and this area is gonna be adjacent to and connecting to the existing parking lot. Is that clear? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's the way I understand it, but if Mel.
So that area now would just be increased onto St. Joe property, adjacent to the city property.
And I think the signs that somebody were asking about, I saw them the other day whenever I went down to the Dog Beach. I think it talks about, I know the blue development sign, but then there's another one that was put up by the
Yep,
city, and I
that's
think
right.
that one addresses overnight parking.
It does,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. So that, I was
Yeah.
unclear did the city own that parcel now, and this parcel that belongs to St. Joe connects to that parcel, which will be an additional parking area as, adjacent to what the city already has.
Yes,
So my question, I guess, is if the city owns this parking and St. Joe adds to it, that's all will be public parking that the city will oversee, or it'll just be the city part will be, the city and St. Joe will oversee the rest of it?
I don't know how
Or will
to
that
answer
just,
your
or will it
question.
all be public parking?
I'd like to hear that too.
Yeah.
I see where you're going, and I think it has to do with an easement that is yet
Right.
to be negotiated.
Exactly. So they're gonna drive across city property to get to this additional parking.
No. So let me, if I can help you. This piece right here is the current parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
So they would be coming in here to access this. They would not be accessing it through the city lot.
So who owns this parcel right here?
That is the right of way
Okay.
for Canal Parkway.
But it still all connects together.
Well, you would not be traveling through the existing city lot to get to this. There is an existing right of way right here to the south of the city's parking lot. This is the piece that the city owns right here, this piece right here.
Okay.
So there's no interconnectability between the two?
They're abutting each other.
I don't think that's right, because the canal's right there, Salt Creek's right there, so there's no way to get access without going across the city parking lot.
Yeah, Laura, I'm confused now if they don't connect. Because
They
on the map.
abut each
There's-
other.
there's
They
no
have
way.
they share a property boundary. So, let me see if I wish we
no
had
way.
it up on the screen.
Whichever one you want to.
So, this one is the city's parking lot, and this is the one they're proposing.
That's this right here is a, this
I
right
just
here.
looked it up on the property appraiser's website, it's owned by the city.
Yeah, that's where the lift station's at. Right.
So that's not the city parking right there?
The city's parking is right here. Well, we
This
got-
is the lift station,
Right,
and that's the city's.
that's right.
So they would be coming in right here to get to this area.
But that right there is not,
You're
that's
saying
wider than that
this
little.
is not parking?
That's parking now.
That's this piece of the city owns.
But this, I mean, maybe if they build it up,
That's a good question about the width of that access, I don't have that information.
she's saying that they're gonna access, that's the easement where they would access.
This,
That,
This is the one the city owns.
cause that's the parking right
This is where
now.
the lift station is.
this is the current parking, this
That's-
is the proposed, and
Yeah.
this is the access.
Yeah,
But this, yeah,
but
so,
this is one road.
and this is owned by the city, right?
It's the right of way.
That's the right
It's the
of way.
right of way, thank you.
Yeah.
So
Can I-
if there's
can I ask
sufficient
the engineer a
width
question?
for them
Sure,
to
sure.
not go
Can
through
I
the
ask
city
the
property,
engineer
I don't know the
question?
answer to that.
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Engineer, sir, are you proposing to actually physically connect the city's parking to the St. Joe parking? Or will there be some kind of barricade or some kind of,
There's a proposed drive coming from the edge of Canal Parkway to their property. If that makes sense, you know how there's that gap where Canal Parkway ends, that right of way? They're gonna be coming through that temporary gravel drive to their parking lot. So the parking is outside of city property into St. Joe's.
but if they cannot find a parking spot in your 52, 62, whatever number you have, and they want to transition to the city's current parking lot, will they have to come back out on the right of way and come into the city's parking lot a different way? Or are you proposing some kind of access between the two parking areas?
They are coming back onto Canal Parkway.
Between the two areas, what I saw, and I couldn't point you to the page that I saw it, but I know I did. There was post and rope barriers, I read
Correct.
that somewhere in here. So
Correct.
does
There's
that,
posts and road barriers, yes.
that divides the new parking area from the city area?
Correct. And I'm assuming there'd be some kind of easement or something like that, or something to have the public use on that property. I can see what you're saying.
Yeah, I would think so, although I've not seen any proposed easements. Has one been drafted?
I will talk to St. Joe, see what I'm doing.
I think what they're asking too is if there's sufficient, because you can't really see without the aerial underneath, if there's sufficient room for this access to come right through that right of way. Because the water Salt Creek is so close, and it gets kind of marshy right there. So they're wondering if this is sufficient width for a vehicle to travel to get in and out.
We've got 24-foot lanes going through there, so 24-foot gravel lane. The entire parking is going to be 20 by 10 spaces with 24-foot wide aisles. So normal parking lot size. So it kind of talks about it is on St. Joe's property, so it's not on the city property. It's St. Joe's property. Also, the sidewalk that's coming from Salt Creek is at the entrance into Mexico Beach Crossings. That's where that sidewalk is coming down. So there's already a sidewalk at Mexico Beach Crossings. It's going to cross. It's well north of the boat ramp road, about 130 feet away is where it's actually going to cross. And that sidewalk path's going to go on St. Joe's property down to the bridge.
Maybe for the next meeting, have a rendering, something large that just makes that clear other than phones and tablets.
That would be much easier, correct? Because I think it'd be a lot easier if everyone would see a blow up. We can point through things because it does get kind of confusing on where everything's
I would
at.
suggest that for city council.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right, before we close, thank you.
No.
Before we close the public portion, I would like to point out that there, I believe in Mel, you can confirm, but there were a couple of emails that were received from the public on this matter.
Correct.
So we have those entered into the record. I believe there are property owners along that way.
Packet is part of the record, I understand.
Okay. All right, so the public part of this is closed. We'll open it up to any additional questions that the board may have, so.
I have one.
something to say.
Well, then he'll need to come up and do just as the others.
All right, let me, just cause my wife is urging me, let me say something.
Call in there.
My name is John Carlton, and I live on a farm outside of Beaufort, Georgia. And I started coming down here about 40 years ago. And I knew Charlie and Inky Parker, and I bought a house over there on the Pier Street. And damn if Michael didn't get it, so I don't have a house here anymore. But my daughter, Fraley Carlton, owns the house down there on this driveway, number 112. And she spent a lot of money on it, and she has done a lot of work on that property, and she's already having problems with people pulling up in her driveway and parking and going back down toward the public area. So I would simply ask that y'all take that into consideration. There needs to be some sort of traffic control in there in the future. Years ago, I got a letter from the current city administrator, and he wanted right-of-way on each side of Pierce Street so that they could pave it and put in parking lots. And I called him up and I said, that is a great idea. I'm all in favor of it. It's gonna cut out all these St. Joe kids that come in here, get drunk, and raise hell. And I mean, they did.
I'm laughing because I was going to.
Yeah,
They did. So I was so happy when it got civilized, you know. You couldn't sit out there at night without having people throw beer cans at you. But I represented the city of Moultrie and the planning commission for years and years. And I don't anymore because I retired, because I got to be too damn old to do it. But I appreciate y'all's quandary because you've tried to deal with property interests and fairness, and I've seen planning commission struggle with this stuff and council struggle with it. And I understand it, and I think y'all are taking the right approach to do a thorough evaluation.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, so the public part of this is closed. Any comments from planning and zoning?
I have some.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Okay, so my first question is for anyone who lives on Canal Parkway who wants to answer.
Do what now?
I have sort of an open question for any resident of Canal Parkway who wants to answer, or all of you who are here, whatever. My first question is, it's sort of a two-part question. Question number one, how has the beach car traffic been on your street this summer? We're coming up to the end of the summer. How has it been? Because we've got this sort of this little lot here, in this location, but we've also got parking at the end of the street down by the jetty. So, sorry, I haven't been on Canal Parkway in years. But that's sort of my first question is, how was it? And then number two is, I can see, I don't have to be a resident of Canal Parkway to pretty much be against this. And I am not, like Miss Lisa Logan said, I am not against a parking lot in this part of town. I'm a little bit less sure that this proposed location is the best spot for a parking lot, but my real question is then what? Okay, we as a city have committed to the St. Joe Company to build a parking lot on the south side of 98. Lisa mentioned the access road from 98 that doesn't currently exist yet. It's not plans, but that may or may not be a good idea. So I guess my other question for you is, would you be opposed? Well, would you be any less opposed to this lot staying here if the vehicle access comes in off 98 and not on Canal Park?
No problem at all.
So I guess we'll take one at a time. Who wants to come stand? We need you to stand here.
We've already, how do we handle this, Mr. Attorney? Can they still come up and reopen?
You can reopen it, but they still need to give their name and address.
You need to reopen first.
Laney Broner.
But, hold on,
Okay.
I'm sorry, brother.
Okay,
We're gonna reopen the public part so
Okay.
that the residents can respond to
Okay.
what.
I'll let you go. I'm already talked.
Okay, I'm Alexandra Johnson, 116 Canal Parkway. I would not be, I'm fine with the parking lot. I think it would be great for the marina people too, to park. Because from where our house is, I do know that a lot of people park in the unloading and loading all day long. And then it becomes people double parking on the road and getting backed up. But my biggest worry is I have 4 small kids. I worry about it getting way too congested right in front of my house to the parking lot. And I'd be much more for this parking lot if there was a road from 98 instead of right in front of our house.
And
So-
how was your traffic this summer without this?
Honestly, I didn't even see that side lot full, like hardly at all. So I didn't think it was too bad.
How about the one at the very end by the jetty? Is that a more popular?
Yes, all the
Closer
way
you
down,
get to the
because
beach.
people don't want to walk,
Sure.
because it's
Right.
already a walk from that parking lot to
Sure.
get to the water. So, I mean, it didn't seem like it got too crowded. I think a lot of the other entrances to the beach are probably more desirable for people, tourists and stuff, because you don't have to walk as far, especially if you go to Canal Parkway. There's only one entrance, and then you have to walk until you find a spot on the beach. So, yeah, it didn't seem too bad. Like, I don't really think we need that big of a parking lot, but, I mean, I don't know, I guess if he has to do it. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Laney Bruner, 110 Canal Parkway. And I'm not opposed. I agree that people on the north side need a beach access to go to, but just not Canal Parkway. When you go down there to the curve to park, then you have traffic coming in and out and in and out. People know now that we don't have that much parking now. I think there's 40 parking spaces, okay? But you add 62 to it, you already have some little bit of problems with using the bathroom. Can you imagine all the other people? And then I'm like her too, with the traffic there and kids, your grandkids and all running around there. I have no problem with what they coming in off of 98, just not on Canal Parkway. Where it just, and has, the transportation department, DOT, approved that much people coming through there. If something should happen, could you get a fire truck down there? Could you get an ambulance down there, in and out? And that's all I
I'm
got.
sure that'll be looked at, thanks.
Jenna Carpenter with 126 Canal Parkway. So when you build this parking lot, you're gonna have the people walk back out and go down Canal Parkway to get to the beach?
Yes.
Is there a plan for any other access to the beach?
There will be. Yeah, there is. I mean, there is a plan for another access, and as development continues in the Salt Creek PUD,
But you don't plan on putting that access in on this phase?
it's for the temporary. No.
I just think that's gonna be a lot of people walking down the road, and there's a lot of vehicle traffic on Canal Parkway. So then you gotta think about that. You got 62 cars, and these people are walking down the road to get to the beach, along with all the car traffic. That could be a problem.
There's no sidewalks.
Well, there's just the one right there beside the canal.
Inside the water.
Yeah.
Anything else on this?
I just want to hear from the public.
Yeah, that's fine. You should.
We are not excited about
I would
the
say one thing about
other phase.
about the access from 98. So there's something we looked into. So on the west side, so the northwest side, you have a whole wetland system, also floodplain there. So where the existing dirt access is from 98, you can look at it, it's wet, but also it's in the floodplain as well. So that was the reason coming off Canal Parkway was to not have impacts to the floodplain. And then if you continue farther east from Canal Parkway, you're not going to meet your connection spacing for DOT. So they require 440 feet. We don't have that distance.
So I've got a question, then how are you gonna do the rest of the phase? If you can't cross 98 and get over there, how are you gonna build all the other stuff you've got planned?
It'd be farther
To
to
the
the
beach.
west. It'd be
Well,
farther
they
to
need
the
to do
west.
something about it. Why didn't they decide that before they put in all this stuff to have those people have access to the beach? Because it's gonna be a hot mess over there. I mean, bad. And you're talking about expensive property that's on the Canal Parkway. That you're gonna be blocked in where you can't get out of your house. You're gonna have to sit there. It's just gonna be worse. I mean, it's gonna be terrible. And I just can't believe that,
That's gonna have to be, I guess, a future part of this, but for now, it's this parking lot tonight, this development order.
Gotcha.
Correct.
All right, so let's close the public part of this. Thank you all for your comments, and we appreciate your interest. Anybody else on the board that has any comments? Any questions? Was there, read through?
I want to give somebody else a chance to speak, but I have another question that's different than that.
Are you gonna ask them again?
No. I'm done with the public.
I didn't mean to, I apologize. You're gonna ask the public again. Go ahead.
So I remember when this phase 2 Salt Creek was approved by the city council a couple months ago. I remember the high level discussion about having a lot on the south side of 98. And that's it, full stop. I didn't hear anything else. As a resident listening into a city council meeting, I know I don't have access to all the information. Like we have 119 pages now for the P&Z. My question is, was the approval or the conditional approval to build a lot on the south side of Highway 98, was it? It sounds like somebody other than somebody at Mexico Beach decided this is the spot we want. It sounds like it's probably the developer who wanted to put here with Canal Parkway access. My question is did anybody talk about getting access off of 98? I realize there's DOT restrictions, but I would imagine that most Mexico Beach residents would love to have access to this parking lot if there's going to be a parking lot in this general area. St. Joe owns this whole lot between the back property of all the residents on Canal Parkway, all the way up to the highway. So why did they pick this spot? Why did they pick it closer to 98 and still have access to the Canal Parkway through this Mexico Beach owned property right there at the curb? Or even, I guess what I don't remember is, was any of this discussed by the city? And who talked to St. Joe about this? And who, if anybody knows why St. Joe picked this spot? I think I know why they picked this spot, but I don't want to speculate.
Because I can't.
Laura or Mel, since you represent this city, do either of you guys have something
I
to say
don't,
on this?
so a lot of this happened when Carly was the one primary point person for the city with my company. And she's gone to better pastures, so I don't have that institutional knowledge that she took with her. I can call her and find out. We're still communicating, but I would assume that you wouldn't want the parking lot closer to 98 because then you still have to walk through all the sand to get down to the sidewalk with your beach gear and whatnot. So I think it's a convenience for the parking lot to be closer to the beach, to the end destination, than it is to the roadway.
So there is, and I looked through my stuff while ago, but it is at my house in my desk, or on my desk. When we had a P&Z meeting last, I don't know, it was right after I got on P&Z. When we first started talking about this parking lot, there is a parking lot in another phase that has public parking down near the beach. And my question back, whenever that meeting was why wouldn't they go ahead and put that parking lot in? It's already on your map, that that's gonna be parking. And they said, well, because it's gonna be a temporary lot, we just want parking. There wasn't really a whole lot of citizens here at that time at the city council meeting. There might have been a few, so don't get me wrong. I don't think that there was this many Canal Parkway residents,
Right.
because I don't even think it was talked about on Canal.
Yeah.
But
So if I understand you correctly, you're saying that when this discussion happened back in the day, that the proposal was, whether the proposal came from Mexico Beach or the proposal came from the developer, the proposal was to expand the parking at the end of the street down by the jetty?
it was just to have some public parking for the people on the north side of 98
Right.
to not either go down to the public parking that's past where Toucans will be, or to the end of the jetties, to kind of disperse some of the parking.
Yeah, okay.
That's all I learned.
Any other questions, comments? Lee, do you have something?
Yeah, back, some of it that I remember, it got pretty silly. I mean, they were even talking about having big bridges going over 98. You know, that you could put your bicycle on, or handicap wheelchairs. But mostly they just talked about getting something on the south side of 98. It never got any more specific than that. It surely didn't drill down to this. Like apparently all of us, I went and looked at this today too, to get some sense of this. I don't do well off drawings, so I have to see it. And this with the Gentech bridge, back, you know, contact bridge down page 93, I kind of walked, in my own mind, I kind of formed the image that the back end of this parking lot, that's was going to where that footbridge, pedestrian bridge was going to go over Salt Creek and run like a boardwalk straight down.
Yeah.
You know, on St. Joe property behind these and off of Canal Street. But obviously, even walking it, I formed my own incorrect conclusions. But it was just, now we're looking at what started off with kind of a just
Parking somewhere.
yeah, park somewhere on the south side. And I agree with everyone. Canal Street, with all that extra foot traffic, that'd be a nightmare here.
Nightmare.
Yeah, that would be a nightmare.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment, because I use that property a lot, and I have for 20 years. I drive my vehicle down to the end and park to walk my dog on the beach. I ride my bike sometimes, and sometimes I walk. And what I've observed is that that end parking lot does get pretty crowded if it's pompano season, and people want to come down and fish from Panama City because they don't want the congestion over there. But I would submit that if there's not an alternative parking place, it's going to fill on the beach and pack its way back. They'll park on the sides of the road. They might park in your driveways if you're not there, but people will find a place to park, whether it's 4th of July fireworks or pompano season. They'll park on the end of these roads down 38th, 39th to get to the beach. the shortest path. So the way I think this is going to be used, having used it myself, is that people will park there instead of in front of your homes, and instead of doubled up, and instead of at the end improperly parked, will park in this parking lot and walk to the beach, whether it's down the road, someone chooses to walk by the water, which is down the boardwalk. So that's, I do use it. I don't know how other people use it, but that's one observation.
So I'll say that I'm not fortunate to live on the south side of 98, I live on the north side of 98.
As
And
do
so-
I.
And so, parking is an issue when we go to the beach, and we use that parking a lot. I don't get up early enough in the morning when we go to the beach to snag a spot at Sunset Park. So, and I'm not gonna battle the crowds on 98 parking parallel there. I'm doing that. You know, 5 or 6 years ago, we used that existing city lot where there were restrooms a lot,
Right.
a lot. Yes, it's a little bit of a walk, but it's a parking spot. You get to go to the beach with that. I probably only went maybe 8 or 10 times this last season down to that area. Only one time maybe I wasn't able to find a spot down there. Probably 6 of those times I was actually able to find a spot at the end of Canal Parkway where the restrooms are. Again, I know I don't live there and I'm not there every day, seeing it 7 days a week, only on Saturdays and Sundays when I go down there. I feel for the council when this goes to the next week, as having to hear probably an elevated chorus of this, and it's all rightfully so with that, about access to that lot. I'm pretty much in favor of that lot there. I didn't know that, I don't know how many spots are in the city spot there. I think I only counted 16 or 18 of those little yellow parking
Curves.
curves there. And I know we're talking maybe 2 or 3 years down the road when that will get full. It may not be full next spring break. It may not be full next summer. I feel for you with the Canal Parkway. You know, other things have come up here at P&Z land use that affected property that we have next to it. And as a P&Z board member, I voted in favor of that land use because that's what was allowed there. That's what that property owner was allowed to do with their property. I'm a big land use property owner rights person with that, despite my other liberal intentions there with that. I feel for the folks that live there and not have that amount of traffic. I do agree with I have seen it, and it shocked me to see people double parked right there in those loading and unloading zones at the end of the day with nobody around, and apparently parked there all day with that. So that has shocked me. So I agree. That would, if I had 4 kids, that would concern me as well, 4 young children as well. I don't really know what I just want to share those
Yeah,
thoughts.
that's
Yeah.
what we're here to do. All right, so are we looking for a motion? And that can be, there's a number of conditions.
Disapprove or approve with conditions.
Okay, so,
And certainly you have to have an easement document of some kind.
yes,
There has to be an easement for them to access the road currently. Is that what you're saying?
Easement from them for the public to use their property.
Gotcha.
Mr. Sloan, I do have one question for you. if they don't put this parking lot right here, what stops them in the future from using Canal Parkway to access their property over there? Because it's,
Well, if it's a city street
and there's an easement there.
and there's an easement there, then they could, depending on what the terms of the easement are, they could potentially use it for other purposes.
To access,
Correct.
like the hotel that's potentially going at the end or whatever.
Whatever is on the other side.
So a couple of the conditions that I heard were the proposed easement, also some discrepancies in the sidewalk width, 5 to 6 feet. So is there anyone
They have
interested?
to address the engineering concerns.
The engineering concerns that were listed in the packet.
Correct.
You're saying
From Anchor.
Yeah, using my 5 feet versus 6 feet width as an example, that was just one that needed to be addressed.
Okay. Would anyone like to put that in the form of a motion with those conditions to move this forward?
So I have a question, as the new kid on the block. It has to do with what power does this board have? So, recommendation only. Can we have a scenario where where one of us individually would not approve the proposal, but make a recommendation to the city council or to the developer back through the city council and say, well, saying no this time, but we recommend that this get fixed, this get fixed, this get fixed. Does this board have that power?
If the board is not comfortable with the information you have now, then you have a couple of options. You can either try to make some kind of decision with what you have now, or you could postpone the issue and get additional information to be able to make a recommendation, one way or the other. So, but I think if I understood your question, can an individual who is a member of the Planning and Zoning Board, separate and apart from the board, speak to a member of the city council and make some suggestions? You obviously have that right as a citizen, but you cannot speak on behalf of the P&Z board.
Right,
Whatever
so-
the board decides, whether you agree or disagree with that
Fair.
is the decision of the board.
So, with a couple of exceptions, basically, each of us on the board here can give a thumbs up or a thumbs down, for the most part.
Or
For whatever
Well,
motion.
evaluation,
Or
conditions, or.
motion to postpone and come back from work.
Right.
Is this an all or nothing proposition? On this, we have something.
Well, I think
before
it's,
us.
I
Yeah,
think it's
if-
as written, and we can,
No, for more clarity, what I'm trying to say, is this the only possible spot that this parking lot can be put? Or if we recommend no, then what are
I
our
don't think,
options?
I don't think that we have that information.
I think I heard that we could make a motion to table and ask the developer to come back and give us more information. Whatever it is, different spot, different entranceway, different dirt, I mean, basically anything, we can ask for more information.
It just kind of seems like there's a lot of stuff in the air here. I know this has been going on forever and ever, and there's always kind of a, let's get it done, put this to bed. But it seems to me we just need to list what our concerns are and then say, come back with that, and then we'll.
Would you like to put that in the form of a motion to recommend disapproval?
I would say table it, not disapprove. Table it pending further information, then we can detail the information that we're looking at. And let's be precise. I was listening to stuff over months and months and months. Well, I just don't think that's a good idea, or that's just, that's just not what I really want. What are our specific, precise concerns to give them something to address, not, and I think we've been sadly lacking in that precision.
So I have a suggestion, Jack. I have some things that, well, I'm leaning towards making a motion to table this and ask for more information. So I know what I want to see, but can we go around the table and see what everybody else wants to see? I'm trying to find a way to yes on this, but I can't find it right now because I personally don't see vehicle access off of Canal Parkway as a viable option. I could find a way to yes if we had a road coming in off 98. So I would like to see the developer come back with proposals. And I understand there's a lot of really good engineering here work, by the way. I have no qualms with any of the engineering studies and all the reams of paperwork that were done, but some of it I think might need to be modified or redone if we're asking for a road coming in from 98. But not all of it needs to be thrown away. But that's one thing. I mean, that's my path to yes. So I would love to see what the developer can come back to us with a proposal for an entrance, including easements, for an entrance off 98. That's
Eric, you wanted some discussion about around the table. I don't know how long this has been discussed. It's been months. Different city council members, different mayor, different P&Z board members now. And this is not directed at you, because I'm sure that two of the new council members will have questions or comments as well. Whereas one of them had been more involved than the other, and he may have additional questions coming up at some point. And I'm not saying let's rush just to get it done, but I don't know that it's fair to the applicant to keep throwing additional things for them to do with that. Had they been told that when they were told to come up with parking for the north side? I feel from listening to them over the last few years, they would have tried to address whatever came from the council with that.
No, there's no doubt, after just a few, the ones I've seen, that the way the council handled itself was grossly unfair to the developers. However, that's why I was making the suggestion that we come up with very specific concerns, because that's what was going on. They were just throwing stuff on the wall and really gave the developer nothing to work with. So if our concern, let them be specific. How will you address coming off 98? How will you address pedestrian traffic from the parking lot down to the beach? That seems to be the two big ones, because that involves danger, people getting hit, kids, traffic. We all know now that Canal Street is a parkway, is a very narrow road. So if you have vehicular traffic, particularly going down to the parking lot at the end, back, that kind of shuttle run with people, with kids carrying their, dragging their beach carts down there, it seems to be the two issues. Getting the vehicular traffic off the parkway, by bringing it off 98, and trying to figure out pedestrian traffic.
So, Leah, I hear everything you say, and I agree. Asking the developer to come back for more information is a little bit unfair to them, because some of them probably already see this as a Bring Me a Rock episode. Bring me wrong color, wrong side. I think they were given 4 requirements.
Yeah.
And I don't think this board or the previous members of the DMV board were necessarily responsible for giving them the requirements, and maybe it should have come from upstairs. But either way, they've been given a disservice that they weren't given some more specific things that we wanted them to look at. I think they were just said, go forth, give us a proposal. So now they've got their proposal here. And a lot of us are saying, why'd you do it that way? Why'd you do it that way? Why'd you do it that way? But again, garbage in, garbage out. So Lee, I hear you. And ultimately, this is all in the hands of the city council. But I would like to maybe start the process. So maybe we send some of our concerns up to the city council, and then they can have their own on Tuesday. And then we have a full set of new conditions or new concerns we want the developer to come back to, so that they only have to come back one more time, and not two, and not three, and not four, because every time they come back, oh, I just thought of something else. Let's just do it all right now.
No, I agree. Matter of fact, I remember one meeting, somebody sitting there at the city council meeting. Well, just let them bring it back. We don't like it, we'll tell them no.
Yeah.
What? So they've been abused. So specificity.
Yeah, we'll leave that to city council, but as far as.
But I agree with her. We put our concerns in specifically, and then the city council can address that and add theirs or subtract them.
And you asked for comments and feelings here, thoughts. I think it would provide a solution to, no one wants a parking lot, and everyone has an idea on where else it might be, just like we had the same discussion a month ago for the grocery store. But what I don't understand and what I didn't hear is why it can't come off of 98. And I don't know that it can, and maybe it can't for environmental reasons or access reasons or DOT deceleration reasons. And I don't know that I would prefer it if it did, but I don't understand if that's a clear alternative or not.
I know we're not back to him. I thought he addressed some of that.
And perhaps so.
Yeah.
The question's come up so many times that apparently if it did. And yeah, please do. We're trying to collaborate.
Yeah, so the issues with the 98 access connection there is you've got all the wetlands to the west of that parking lot going to the north at 98. You also have a floodplain that runs through, the 100-year floodplain that runs through where that existing access is, the dirt access. So that'd be impacted the floodplain there. And going further to the east, you don't have the access connection spacing with Canal Parkway. The requirement's 440 feet, you don't have the distance. That's the requirements there.
But y'all gonna build everything over there on the south side, so how are you
Well,
gonna be able to build?
Why don't you build the original one that you're gonna build?
We got, sorry, we have to,
Sorry, we got
can't do it that way, folks.
I would say that, you know, when it's discussed, like, why they build now, that, you know, whenever you're building, it's going to be farther to the west, and you've got all these requirements for wetland setbacks, buffers, there's beach mice over there, so there's a lot of other environmental factors that we have to play into as we design on the south side, and north side as well. So there is the whole Salt Creek area and all those wetland systems that drain there. So this is kind of the pocket there that's actually got somewhere to tie into. If you go farther to the west, there's not any way to get down to the beach for quite a while.
So just a general question. All the things I just heard that are regulations that either were considered or are hurdles to different options. I heard DOT, I heard environmental protection, I heard floodplain, I heard drainage, runoff. My general question is there a waiver process for any or all of those?
Well, DOT, access connection spacing, I mean, they don't just let you just put an access wherever you want. I mean, it's in a table and it's
Fair enough.
very straightforward.
Let's use DOT as your answer. Is there a waiver process for that, for us or the developer or the city or someone to apply for a waiver for that? You said 440 feet.
So it's not if you have, usually it's not if you have another access point. So if you don't have an access point to public infrastructure, then there's a way to get away with that. But if you have a public access point, that's where they want you to put it.
Okay, thank you.
Because they don't want connections all, for access management, safety concerns. In terms of the wetland side, I guess you can, but then you're kind of doing the opposite of what you usually would like to do in terms of protecting wetlands and the environmental components of a design. In terms of the floodplain, I mean, you really try to stay out of floodplain areas as much as possible, to mitigate the downstream and upstream effects of that. So I guess there is a way for anything, but it's not the best path forward overall.
It's not to beat a dead horse, but next time if you could bring back illustrations to show floodplain and environmental, it's just a whole lot easier to see than say, look here where I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I don't want to direct you, I don't want to give you any work, I don't think I have the power, but I'll just say, I heard every one of your explanations, and I believe every one of them, but I will say there's always an engineering solution.
We don't want to.
You're an engineer.
Just leave it at that.
All right, we need to make a decision on whether or not this is table
I make a motion that we table. And what's next, Mr. Sullivan? Do we make a motion to table and request more information? Do we?
Yeah, I mean,
do that?
if you cannot make a recommendation because you don't have enough information, then specify the information that you want as part of the motion.
Okay, so I make a motion that we table this and ask the developer to return with potential options for road access off of 98.
I would also ask that you have them address all of the engineering comments
Thank you.
and address the access easement to access the property, the
Okay.
public to access the property,
And
to give us a definition of temporary.
I like all those. Now, I know where those engineering exceptions are because they're in red font. Do we need to be specific in the
Just specify the date of the report.
Okay, so I heard four things, just to recap while kind of taking notes. One was the proposed easement, the defined temporary, the engineering discrepancies, and you originated with proposed options off of 98. Is that right?
Yes.
You want to
The engineering report's July 26, 2024.
Yes, with the anchor letterhead, yes, July 26th.
So I would like to just tag on to that. There are some comments in here that don't necessarily need to be addressed, but the engineering comments that I can't address need to be answered by the applicant. For example, the reason why I want you to define temporary is because we generally don't require landscaping improvements to temporary things like food trucks are temporary. We don't require landscaping. Construction trailers are temporary. We don't require landscaping. So that's why we need to understand what temporary means in this framework. So if it's temporary, then we wouldn't require landscaping. But if it's going to be more permanent, then we would look at the landscaping.
So, hope Tammy's taking notes on that. Motion.
So is that your motion?
Yeah, that was my motion. With amendments.
With the four things?
So is that sufficient?
And if that's his motion.
Okay. All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? All right. We have a second. A second. We have a motion from Eric and a second from Larry, and if Tammy would do a roll call.
Okay.
Should we get Tammy to read it first? Sorry.
No. Grabber here. Okay, Mr. Fasagi is making a motion to table this item and for the developer to return with potential options of entrances off Highway 98 to address engineering discrepancies public access easement, and the definition of temporary.
I think you did a great job.
Is there a date to table? Normally you table to a certain date.
Yeah, just to be clear, did Mr. Sloan, in option number 2, the engineering questions, did she need to record the date of the letter?
July 26, 2024, anchor engineering report. And table it would be to the next meeting.
Table it to the next meeting.
So I just have a comment on that. That's fine, I like the date certain, but they need to get me that information in a timely fashion so that I have time to turn it around. Because if they give it to me on the 26th of August, that won't give me time to turn it around.
Okay, so to amend so I guess Tammy, to amend that second item to deliver item 2 to Laura by.
Well, usually I'm allowed 30 days too, so we're already up 30-day period, so I would need it quickly.
So, I don't know,
Within a week?
within a week, so next Monday.
That'd be the 12th. So you've amended your motion, do you amend your second?
Larry?
Yeah, I'll remember it. I'll be honest, yeah.
Okay. As soon as Tammy's finished recording, we have a motion, we have a second, and Tammy's gonna do roll call.
Okay, Ms. Gardner,
Yes.
Mr. Elsie,
No.
Mr. Kerrigan,
No.
Mr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Fasaki.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-2, thank you. All right, the next and final item of business. Duke Energy easement, Mexico Beach Welcome Center. That's Laura Mills Gutcher, if you'll explain this one to us.
Yes, this is not something for you to make a decision on, this is for your information. Duke Energy is requesting an easement over at the Welcome Center to install 2 EV charging stations in the parking lot and then necessary equipment in the grassy area. And so I know that Tim is going to work on some language for that, but this is for your information on as the mayor asked for this to come to you for information purposes.
The city approved an agreement apparently with Duke Energy, which I only got a copy right before this meeting, so they didn't change all the wording, it says City of Brooksville. Anyhow, I'll take this document and then work on their easement. There's some inconsistencies right off the bat that I can see, so. But again, this is just information for y'all, no recommendation.
And for the public's understanding of what we're talking about, this is for 2 EV electric vehicle charging stations. That's
Yes.
what we're discussing here. They would be pretty much at the Welcome Center.
Yes,
Right.
in the parking lot,
Any cost to the city for that?
not that I'm aware of.
All right. We'll bring this up to the public. Does anyone from the public like to come up and comment on this? Okay. If there's nothing from the public, we'll close the public
I just
discussion.
have a question.
If you'd come up and do the thing.
Jenna Willis, Carpenter, 126 Canal Parkway. Who pays the utility bill for the EV charging stations? Will that be a taxpayer expense?
I can't answer that until I get a chance to read this agreement.
My understanding originally was that was a pay-as-you-go station, it wasn't a free.
Oh, a pay-as-you-go. Okay, that would be great, as long as it's not a taxpayer.
I forgot that. Lisa, if you, nothing, okay. All right, we're gonna go and close the public comment, turn it over to the board. Any questions, comments? And this is not a voting matter, right? It's just for information only? Okay, well, with that concluded, that's everything we had on our agenda tonight, so would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? Yes. All right, we have a motion and a second. Thank you, everyone.